I've updated my sheet set and title block selection. Going to Insert, Load Family, navigating to the A3 title block and loading into the project. I've then selected all my past sheets and changed them over. This means as well that I've had to update my sheet list. At this point in time, I've got my cover sheet, site plan. The site plan, I have gone back into the view template to flick it on its side. What I've done is I've gone to my view template and I've changed the view from True North to Project North. I've then loaded that back, and then what I've done is the actual view on the sheet. I can select the view on the sheet, and then you'll see in the options bar under the ribbon, I've got rotation on sheet set to 90 degrees clockwise. And now I'm just going through updating all of my text because my text would have been also skew-iffy. So I've just started to align that back up. I then have one floor plan per sheet. So ground floor plan, level 1, building elevations, I've split those up as well. North and east, south and west. Section A, there'll be 2 sheets for details. At least I believe there will be at this point. 2 sheets for reflected ceiling plan, 1 for our kitchen joinery unit. We have our wall type schedule, which I've now completed to include all the wall types in the project. And I've just changed graphically how they appear slightly. All of these are within the legend, and they're all basically just detail lines and text. And the door and window schedule has been updated to fit on an A3 title block. What I've also done, or what we should also do now, is update some of this information within the title block. So going up to the Manage tab, and then clicking on Project Information, I get this window that appears here, where we can fill in metadata in our project information, which will then correspond to our title blocks as well. So to give you an example, if I go to client name, I could type in assessment task 4 as an example, click OK, and you'll see that updates here in the title block. And likewise the other way, project name, I could put in there and what will happen now is if I go back to my Manage tab, Project Information, that is also updated in here as well. What I'll do is I'll update the title block as well, because we want to make sure that all of the data fits within the text box provided. So let's go back to Project Information, and we'll find here project address. We can add that in here. We can also click on these 3 dots, and this brings this up here, so this little window. So I'll just type in the address. Okay, click OK. Alright, now that really should be on the title block, and we can do that, and this goes into the next component where we're going to edit this title block. And so let's just double check some of the other information here. Project number, we can edit that here. I'm going to put in assessment task 4. Date issue is pretty self-explanatory. Drawn by will be your initials. The sheet name's taken care of here, and the sheet number, and that's been derived by this data here in the actual project browser. The checker, it doesn't really matter at this point, but here, assessment task and 2-story house, which are the metadata fields of client name and project name. Well, under project name, we can just put in Wingrove Residence as an example. Okay, so that all fits quite well, but although we probably would want to just have we might want to adjust this. I'll show you how to do it regardless. So to edit title block, I'm just going to click on the title block, go edit family, and this is much like the title block or the block editor within AutoCAD. So I can click on any one of these labels. We can change the size of them if they're too big, too small. We don't like the way they're appearing. And then as well, we can click on one of these labels and then go up to the option or go to the modify ribbon under the modify tab in the ribbon edit label. Click on that and you'll see at the moment client name is there. but we have the ability to pick up any of the other data as well. So I just want to see project address is here. So you could theoretically say, okay, I want the project address and the client name I want to get rid of. What I might do is I'm going to change this one. I'm going to swap these around. So I'm going to go project name. I'm going to drag project name up here. I'm going to drag this down to here and change this to the address. So what I'll do is I'm going to change the size of this label. I'll change it to 3mm, so I'll make it smaller. I'll go edit label, client name I'm going to get rid of, and I'm going to go to project address. And click the little green arrow, and that looks good. Okay, excellent. And then wrap between parameters only. Yes, thank you. That will mean that the text will just continue to wrap down. If we run out of space here, it won't continue on and block over some of our other pieces of information. And I might want to just get rid of these logos for now. You can put in your own logo when you have that ready to go, but at this point I'm just going to leave it blank. I'll then go load to project and close, go to today's class. Do I want to save? Nah, because it will be saved in the project now. And then override the existing version and its parameter values is what I'm after here. So I do that, and you'll see now that information's gone, and there's our address there. Okay, and I just want to double check that works. Okay, no worries. So you can put whatever information is relevant to your assignment in here, and now you know the process to change over information within the title block if required. The next thing I'm going to look at is our cover sheet in particular. So all I've done here is there's nothing too special. I've added in my general notes, which just consist of text boxes essentially that's just placed on the sheet. So a big text box here in 1.8, another text box of 1.8. My general notes, that little text box there is 3.5. I then have a larger one that is the assessment task name in 10mm, and then smaller text for the address in 6mm. And then all I've done is right-clicked on that, gone to Override Graphics and View, Element, and then just click this button here that half-tones it, which makes the text like a grey. So that's how I've gotten this look. What I'll do now is I'm going to get a sheet list up, and also make a 3D perspective view for us to place on the cover sheet. So firstly, the sheet list. I'm going to go up to View, then Schedules, and then go down to Sheet List. And this looks a lot like what we went through in the last class with schedules. So at the moment, I've got data relevant to the sheets. That's fine. So I want to get it's pretty simple here. I really just want my sheet number and my sheet name. And you can put in other information here like drawn by, and even the current revision or the revision date. That's a good example. Next up, I don't want to filter them by anything. Sorting and grouping, I want to sort them by the sheet number. The rest of that is fine. I'll just change my text to be consistent with everything else. So 2.5 for the heading, 1.8 for the title, 1.8, 1.8. Click OK. That now appears here. So I'm just going to bring this back like so. Okay. And then I'll make these bold. Similar to what I did in the last schedule. Okay, and then go back to my cover sheet, double click on my schedules quantities, find my sheet list, click and drag, whoops. There we are. And where am I going to put that? I'll put that around here. We might need to just adjust this a little bit. Alright, that looks pretty good for now. So we have our the beginnings of our sheet list, and as we add more sheets, this will automatically update to reflect those changes. Some of the data here is type-based, others is instance-based. So the drawn by, the reason why that's instance-based is because not every drawing sheet may be drawn by me. I might be in a team of 6 and each of us might be doing different sheets, or there could be multiple people doing it. So you might have in here and then something that looks like that. So you know who drew that drawing or that relevant drawing sheet. In your case, it's going to be all your initials. Okay, so next up I'm going to go to my floor plan. Doesn't really matter which one. And I'm going to click on under view, the 3D view, and then camera. So when I click on that, I get like this little camera icon that appears just underneath my cursor. And I'm going to click somewhere around the front, somewhere like this. And I'm just going to click once and hold down my mouse and drag. Whoops, that did not work at all. Let me just do it one more time. So click and drag, and as I drag, it shows you these 3 sort of lines here, the middle one being your focal point, and the other 2 being sort of your field of view. So I'm going to let go and click once more, and I get something that looks like this. So this is a perspective 3D view of our property, and I'm just going to, I'll edit this up a little bit, but what I will do first is I'm just going to click on one element. I'll click on this column here, and I'm just going to orbit around so it looks something like that. I'm pretty happy with something like that. I can then click on the crop box to make this bigger or smaller. And a little tip for you, so you don't get like all these sort of shaky lines here, it's always a good idea to have your target elevation and eye elevation at the same position. So my eye elevation is where we're currently looking, and we're sort of looking up, so that number is slightly higher. So I'm just going to copy and paste that in. And orbit around a little bit. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. That looks alright for now. And I'll drag that back. Alright, so I'll just play around a little bit with some of our visibility. So I'll go to my graphics, see what that looks like in shaded mode. Not too bad. Shadows. Show ambient shadows. Do I want to look at that perhaps with some lighting? What sort of light setting do I want? I'm just going to say still. There's no real right or wrong here. I'm just playing around with, you know, sort of what we've got. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, that looks alright. We can put in a background as well. We can give it either a sky or a gradient. So, actually let's go gradient. Apply. And then I'll just change this up a little bit. Okay, excellent. Something like that for now. That's fine. And I'll just widen this up a little bit. Alright, so under my 3D views, I'm going to see this here now as 3D view 3. So I'm just going to rename that, and I'll just call that perspective 1. Go back to my cover sheet and drag that perspective onto my sheet, like so. And it might be a bit big, and that's fine. What I'll do now is I'll click on the view itself. I'll go to my type selector and say no title, so it gets rid of the title underneath of the image. Then I can click on that and I can say size and crop. So when I click on that, I've got the ability to lock the proportions, which I want to do. Its current size is 176 wide. Let's say I want that to be 150. Okay, that's a bit too, still not small enough. So what I'll do is I'll just draw a detail line and roughly get the idea of how big this schedule is. It's 108. So I can click on that, crop, lock the proportions, 108 mil wide. There we go. And then just sort of eyeball this and line this up. Okay, I can hide the crop box. It looks something like that. That's a bit better. And we've got the beginnings of our title sheet. I'll just keep messing around with this until I'm happy with the way that it appears. Okay, because there might still be some other information that we need to put onto our cover sheet, but that's a good start for the time being. To create a reflected ceiling plan, we can do so under the View tab in the Create ribbon and under Plan Views. You can click on Reflected Ceiling Plan, pick your selected levels. In this case, we have 4 levels in the project, and then click OK. A little tip for you in our regard, or basically in all cases, you don't want to pick your actual ceiling level for your reflected ceiling plan. You want to pick the relevant ground level. So we already have these created, but what I will do is I'm just going to delete all of them. So under ceiling plans in the project browser, I'm just going to delete them all. Okay, once they're gone, you'll notice that under floor plans, I no longer have ceiling plans available under my views. So I'll go back to here. I'll go reflected ceiling plan. I'm going to pick my ground floor and level 1 and then say OK. And so they're going to come up looking something like this to begin with. We're currently on level 1 and I'm going to go down to my ceiling plans and ground floor. So there's a lot of work to do at the moment because we're currently we're looking at a view that hasn't been edited. It's still got all of the categories showing. There's no view template associated. And look, that's completely fine for the time being. What we have to look at is how we want to create elements and place elements for reflected ceiling plans, and then how do we want them to show. So reflected ceiling plans vary greatly from job to job, office to office, project to project, and there's many different ways you can do this within Revit. Some firms prefer to just use 2D elements and copy and paste them around. Others prefer to use 3D elements that actually don't hold anything three-dimensional within them. So it's actually a family, but the only thing within the family is a 2D element. Some firms like to actually have 3D families, but they're actually just made of three-dimensional lines, nothing actually with 3D geometry. And then finally, there are those that prefer to actually model with complete families with lots of detail within them. We're going to touch on a few different methods and give examples of a few different methods, just so you can experience the differences between them and what you might find most expedient, or if you ever to work in a practice that does it one way or the other, you're geared with those skills from day one. So the first thing to look at within a reflected ceiling plan is the view range, because it works in reverse to a floor plan. So at the moment, we are currently in this level, which is our ground floor, and the top range is level 1, and then our cut plane is at 2.3 meters. So essentially we're sitting on level 1 looking down on the ground floor. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to I'll change that to level 1 ceiling level with an offset of 0. So it's sort of like we're stuck to the ceiling looking down at the floor plan. And then the next is the cut. So the cut at the moment is at 2.3 meters. So I'll click apply. Oops, I'll change that as well to the view depth to ceiling. Say OK. So it looks something like that. All right. Or I could change this to unlimited. It doesn't really matter. I might even just leave it at unlimited for now. And then we have, or actually I might leave it at the associated level. Ceiling level, and yep. So I'll leave these at level 1, that's fine. So we're stuck to the ceiling looking down onto our ground floor. Next is the cut plane, which is currently at 2.3 meters. So if I change that to what a floor plan is, which is 1.2 meters or 1 meter, you'll see now that I'm cutting through the doors. But generally speaking, sometimes you may want to have your reflected ceiling plans higher. So I might put mine at 2.1. I can't see the door anymore, so it still needs to be lower. So 2 meters, can I see the doors? Yeah, I can see the doors then, so that's okay. I might leave it at that, but to be honest, it doesn't really matter because we're going to change the way that we see our doors regardless. So this diagram here really does help with view ranges, and they are saying that gets a little bit confusing, especially with RCPs, but generally speaking, once you have them set up once, you can just copy and paste that from floor to floor, because reflected ceiling plans are always the same. You always want to see the same things from level to level. So I'll click OK, and you'll notice now that when I select anything within this plan, I'm selecting the ceiling. I'm not actually selecting a floor. I've got the ceiling here. But I can still create and tag items like I always have been able to do. So if I go room tag, you see the rooms appear, and I can continue to tag these just as if they were a floor plan. But what I will do is I'm going to open up the electrical fixtures model that's on Student Web that you've downloaded. And within here, I'll take you through what some of these items are. Now, I haven't given you every item, and that's intentional because some of these you're going to create yourself. So what we have here is some downlights that you're seeing in 3D. We've got some either cooling or ducted heating diffusers. This red item is a smoke detector. And then on the wall, we've got a couple of different items. You've got a single and a double GPO. That's just at different heights. And then you've got single and double light switches, both in a horizontal plane and in vertical designs as well. We may need more throughout the project, but the other ones you're going to create just by using more of the simplistic method, which is really just detail groups. So what's going on here is that you're going to notice a lot that when I click on some of these items, you get like this like stick line that appears. What that is that Revit needs to see, in order for Revit to show you one of these items, it needs to be able to cut through your item in general. So what you're seeing there is actually an invisible line. You can't see it anywhere else. It doesn't actually exist anywhere except for when you click on an item. But the reason why that's there is because don't forget that in floor plans, if an item sits above 1.2 meters, it's not going to show you on a floor plan. But if I go to a floor plan here, you'll notice that these switches or these GPOs are showing me, even though this GPO is sitting at 1.2 meters, even if I change this to 1.8 meters, whoops, I got to change that. Whoops, which one do I want? Sorry, the light switch. My bad. Let me just change that again. 1.8. And go back to the ground floor. Okay, the light switch is still showing even though it's 1.8 meters above the ground floor, because in that instance, these light switches have these lines that go all the way to the bottom. So this line here, even though it's not going on the ground, even though that line is cutting through my floor plan, I still get to see that light switch even if it's really high up. These GPOs, not so much, a little bit different. They sit, as long as they sit within the bounds of a floor plan, which is like up to 1200, you're going to see them. If these GPOs were sitting at 1800, we wouldn't see them. But having said that, that's in a floor plan. We want to see all of these things in an RCP, in a reflected ceiling plan anyway. So it's kind of null and void. But it's just these lines are here because a lot, typically in commercial drawings, you'll have plan views, elevations, and RCPs where you want to see electrical items. That's not so much the case in residential. The other thing too you'll notice is that if I go to my reflected ceiling plan, this little sample file, you've got the fire detector here, or the smoke detector. You've got these four-way diffusers, and you've got the downlights. But if I go to my floor plan, I can see my downlights, and I can see my smoke alarm or smoke detector, but I can't see the four-way diffusers. And that is because if I go to my 3D view, you'll notice that these items all have those sticks that I was talking about, those invisible lines. So when we're on floor plan, it's cutting that, and then it's showing us this item up here. It's not doing that with these diffusers because the diffusers do not have one of those invisible lines. It's just going to show us in the reflected ceiling plan, never in plan. So I've created those two differently just so you can get that idea. There's a lot of different parameters available within these different families, which I'll go through shortly. So what I'll do is I'm just going to take one of these downlights, so light, downlight, recessed, go edit family, or I can just go Control-C, Control-V, and I'm going to load this into our current project. Okay, so when I load this into our project, this is in our ground floor RCP. And for instance, let's just put a couple in the front room. So I'll put one here, one there. I'll do 4. And you can see there's a bunch of grid lines that sort of help me out with where to place these. So it looks something like this. We're currently in a 1 to 100 floor plan. And that's basically what we're going to be using as 1 to 100. You'll see here DL1. It's pretty typical that you may have more than one type of downlight, so having this annotation is pretty normal. But what we can do is you might have 2 types of downlight. So if we click on this downlight here, we can go edit type, we can duplicate it and say this one is downlight type 2, so DL2. I'm going to update this code here, SP, shared parameter, light code, DL2. Say OK. And when I do that, that one updates now to DL2. I can also change its dimensions in here as well. So under other, the radius is 80. I can make that like it's a big light, like 150. And you'll see that light updates here. And if I was to go to the 3D, which I will do, I'll go to the 3D of our project. There's our ceiling. There's those DL1s, those downlight type 1s. And there's that new light, that DL2 that I just created before. And if we go underneath our ceiling, that's what it looks like. So I'm just going to change that. I'll go back because I just want DL1. I don't want anything else. DL2 can be there, but DL1's the only one I want. Okay, so that's for our downlights. Next up are light switches. So I'm going to just close everything else off I don't need. Go back to here. And let's just take a double light switch, something that looks like this. And this time I'm just going to go Control C into our project, Control V. Now, when I place this around, I may not see that. I'm just going to go to my actual floor plan. It's probably easier to see it in my floor plan. Okay, so there's my lights there, my light switches. I can hit spacebar and that flips them back and forward. I can use my rotate tool, flip them around as well, so it looks something like this. And let's say, for instance, I want them available as soon as I walk in the house. So I may have them sitting over here like this. It's hard to tell what's really going on here at the moment. But what I can do is this little line here. I can go align. Like so. And it'll look something like that. I'll just go to my 3D. Should be working in 3D while I'm doing this as well. And turn on my section box. And just make sure that everything is sitting in the right place. Okay, so that's sitting up against the wall. I want that to come out. So I'm just going to drag this out. AL, face of wall, back of light switch, that's now sitting in the right position. Okay, and then if we look in the properties window, it's currently sitting at 1000 above the finished floor level, which is basically typical for all light switches. And then under the type selector, you will see, well, at the moment, because I went Control C, Control V, I only have this one type. But if I go back to our other project, this sample project, this is probably an example where I should have gone Edit Family, and then load into project. So I'm going to load into project and close. And the reason why I'm doing that is because when I went Control C, Control V, it only takes that one type of family. It doesn't take all of the other types. So what I'll do is I'm just going to quickly get rid of that family and then load that back in the correct way. It is always a good habit to do this method. So edit family and then load into project and close and load into your relevant model. Okay. Because now in the type selector, you'll see these other light switches appear here. So I'm going to take the double vertical. Where did that go? That's over here. Alright, make that okay at 1000. Alright, that looks good. And then I just need to go to my floor plan then just adjust where I want to see that. And when I go back into my RCP, I can't see my my switches at this point. And this is an example of before about what I spoke about making sure that we're cutting through those invisible lines so we can see the switches appropriately. So I'm going to go back to my view range and just change my cut to be at 1000. Click OK, and there's my light switches there, which is in this case a double switch. So it's going to look something like that. So I'll go back to my sample file, my electrical fixtures file, and let's pick up on this and take one of these GPOs. I'm going to go Edit Family, and then go Load into Project and Close. Okay, and I can just hit Escape a couple times. I'm just going to go back to my ground floor plan and go CM on my keyboard, so it picks up my GPO. And under my type selector, pretty simple, I've got two types. I've got double and a single. So I'll take the double and I'll hit spacebar a couple times. And I'm just going to go turn off my thick lines. I'll put one here in this corner of the room, put one here as an example. Hit escape a couple times. Let's go to our RCPs, and then in our RCPs you can see those double GPOs are there. Alright, and they're currently sitting at 1000 above finished floor level. I'm going to change that to 300, which is pretty standard. They all should be around there unless otherwise specified. And in my floor plan, I can see my GPOs, and I've changed them back to 300. And then what I've done is just updated my view range. So my view range is now sitting at 150 above the floor, is where we're taking the cut from to make sure we can see those GPOs. So we've got our top range at level 1, our view depth at level 1, and our cut plane at 150. Click OK. That now looks good to go. And if I go to my 3D, we can see these elements now in this view. You'll notice too is if you're in coarse mode, or if you're in fine mode, or sorry, if you're in medium mode. So let's go to like medium mode. I can't see anything on the face of those GPOs, but as soon as I go to fine mode, I then see those elements. Same goes for the switches. These just appear as boxes if they're in other modes. Okay, and then under my ground floor plan, well, you'll notice that within the floor plans, you're seeing all of these elements because we're cutting through them. So we have to control what we do and don't see. But before we do that, let's just finish off with a smoke alarm. So go back to our example file or our resources file. And I'm going to pick up that smoke detector, Edit Family, and Load into Project and Close. And then I'm just going to place that anywhere around here. Yep. Okay, and then I'm just going to lift up the section box. Okay, and I'll just drag this back like that. Okay, so I can see my smoke alarm here. When I click on that smoke alarm, its ceiling height is 2.7 meters. And then what is the height? I think that actually is right. Yes, that is right. Yep, cool, 2.7. And then when I go to my RCP, I can see that smoke detector there. Now I can just drag these around to wherever I want, but a lot of these elements do have invisible reference planes, which will help you to dimension and align them to. So let's take like the smoke detector. If I want that in the middle of these 4 lights, I can just use my dimension tool. Click on one light, click on the center of the smoke detector, the center of that light, click off in the space, and then click the EQ button, and that smoke detector has now aligned itself to the middle of those. I can then click on unconstrain if I want to get rid of that, or I might want to keep the constraint and click OK. And that way, if I was to move this relevant to the wall and say actually this light is going to be only 1000 off of this wall, I do that, and then this smoke detector moves relevant, so it's always between this light and this light perfectly halfway through. So we can do stuff like that too. So I can dimension between these and there and say, okay, I want this to be 800. And I can choose my line tool and say I want to get to the same point as this downlight, and I want this downlight to get there. And they all align up nicely. Same with this one here. I want to align it that way, and that works out fine. Same goes for the GPOs. I can dimension the GPOs off of the wall and say, actually, I want that to be minimum, say 600 off of that wall, like so. And I can do the same on the other one. Like so. In other rooms like the kitchen or the pantry where my GPOs are going to be a little bit higher, I can just copy them into place like I've done here. Go to my 3D view and I'll just use my section box tool. This is where working in 3D is really helpful as well. And I'll take both of these and then just move them up higher. So this might sit at 1000 above my kitchen bench. And likewise with this one as well, that may go up to say 1200 inside the pantry. Or I could have them at different heights. Could have them at 600. I can have them at 300 still, like behind a dishwasher or something like that. We'll know how to place these a little bit better once we start modeling up our kitchen cabinetry. But for now, that works. And if I need one of these to be single, I can just click on that, go to my type selector, click on single, and you can see that GPO updates accordingly. I'm going to go back to my ceiling plan. And I'm just going to pick up on the final piece in the example or in the resources file, which is the diffuser. So I'm going to click on one of these diffusers, edit family, load into project and close. And then just place that anywhere in the ceiling. So I can just go like this and you'll see that will place it straight on the floor. I can then click on that element and then the offset from elevation, elevation from level, again 2.7 meters. Go back to my ceiling plan and I'll see that diffuser now in here. And again, the reason why I don't see the pattern on that diffuser is I need to change this into fine mode and then it will look something like this. And that's how I can see that pattern on the diffuser. And it really just depends on the level of detail you want to have. So I might center these up now between those two. Click OK. And then I can say I want my smoke detector to be aligned to that as well. Like so. Go back to our 3D. And I might just drag this up this way. And I'll drag the ceiling up. And even within our ceiling space, we can see what that looks like from up here. And then when I orbit underneath, you can see what that looks like as well. We're really starting to get some more detail now into our model in terms of electrical items. In the RCPs as well, the reflected ceiling plans, I can just use a detail line, DL, and then I'm just going to grab a dash line, dash 01, and then use my arc tool just to pin these together from point to point to do my electrical cables. As an example, like so, and then just detail that up. Now there could be other items that you want to have, like let's say for instance it's pretty common to have HDMI next to the TV, or maybe a RJ45 outlet for cable or something like that. And what I'll do is we'll just draw something up a little bit differently. So the other common way of doing RCPs, and there's nothing wrong with doing it, it's very simple, is just using detail lines. So if I go back to my detail tool, I'll go like this. I'll draw an arc. I'm just going to draw next to this one. I'll do something like this. And there are so many different ways that you can do these symbols. Every firm has slightly different symbols. Every single consultancy does slightly different symbols. I very rarely see the same ones used again and again. So I'll just do a triangle. And then in here using 1.8 text, I might just have D for data. I might just make that slightly bigger. And it will look something like that. Now I can take these, if I want to use this again and again, I can take those two items, click on the detail group, and then just go, or RJ45 data outlet. Okay, and then I can just copy this around, can double C. I don't know, let's say I want one in the kitchen there, like so, and then just keep placing them around the model as required. The one downside to that is I will not see that in 3D. So if I go back to here, I can see my GPOs in 3D, but I can't see my data outlets, my RJ45s, because they're only detailed and modeled up in 2D. We'll come back to the RCP drawings in a little bit, but first let's take a look at starting to fill out our project with some external families and giving some context and some more information and detail around plumbing fixtures and eventually kitchen joinery as well. So in one of the files that's available on Student Web are the assessment tasks for external families that you can open and utilize. So there's a selection here that we're going to use from. Some of these we'll add to, or you can add to. Others we'll continue to use throughout the balance of the assignment. But I think it's important quickly to take a look at external families in a little bit more detail, as this can be an area of confusion and can cause problems for projects further down the line. So there's always a fine line that delineates what is downloaded and what's created in-house when it comes to Revit families, because there is such a wide, vast array of content available online for free. It is incredibly tempting to just download everything and just keep importing it to the model and utilizing that from there. But I thought I'd just talk for a second about the differences between manufacturer and supplier content and content that you build in-house in a real-world basis. So really, when it comes to manufacturer and supplier content, they're great for items like white goods and appliances, ovens and fridges and whatnot, as well as plumbing fixtures, toilets and basins and stuff like that. They're also good for windows, as you've experienced on this project. We've used manufacturer window content and it's very robust and presents really well. Also, bespoke lighting is something that you would work around downloading content for. But then with furniture, you would really only download content that is, again, bespoke in nature. So think about if you've got a certain type of desk that you're utilizing on a project that is actually selected and approved by the client, you would probably download that selected type of workstation. Definitely clinical items or specialty items, they're always downloaded by manufacturer basis, especially if you're thinking about stuff like industrial items, industrial pumps and generators, or it could be like MRI machines or patient beds or something like this. These really you wouldn't make in-house yourself. You would want to find the manufacturer that produces those items and download them from there. But when you look at content that's built in-house, in terms of high quality BIM driven firms will have their own doors, and that's because there is a ton of content, as you now know, a ton of metadata that can be embedded in doors that can then be called out, and you would rather have them all streamlined within the firm and be reading the same data attributes. If you were to download these online, you could end up with vast arrays of different types of doors by different manufacturers with different names, different coding that nothing talks to each other in a schedule. It can become very, very painful. Casework and joinery is another one. Generally speaking, regardless of whether it's bespoke, as in like your joinery is unique on every project, or whether even you're a volume builder and you utilize the same type of wardrobes, or you have like the same selection of wardrobes, you would want to create those in-house as you best see fit and then utilize those, whether it's kitchen vanities and built-in casework. Very rarely, I can't actually think of a single time where I've downloaded a vanity unit from a Revit family website and plugged it into a project and it just happens to fit perfectly and it's exactly what I want. The other one is generic windows. So I did touch before, and the windows we've utilized in this project are very high quality manufacturer windows, but I'm talking more along the lines of windows like office windows or for a tower, skyscraper, curtain walls. And these you generally will make in-house. You can't find those anyway. They're proprietary. They're customized for that particular project. So you might as well build those families inside your model or in your own modeling environment. The RCP, which relates to what we've just gone through, that's usually a mixture of both. Again, because RCP items, how lights display, switches, GPOs, data points, stuff like this, the symbols of those different items can be so different from firm to firm. You don't really just download them online. They just appear the way you want. They could be different sizes. They could be the wrong symbols. They could be presenting wrong. They may not show in certain views. They may have different line colors. So generally, you want your RCPs to read the same from project to project. So it's worth the time investing to create those items yourself and then just take them from project to project. And then with beds, again, it's more generalized, so just normal, a double bed, a king size bed, standard sofas, standard office equipment, These can be made in-house because they're not proprietary. It's more generic. It's saying that, you're sort of denoting that a king bed goes here and this is the size of a king bed. Whether it's manufacturer A or design B is really inconsequential when it comes to Revit modeling. So a good tip for you is to work backwards. So what do you need out of that model at the end of the day? Is this a visualization model, as in one that's going to be rendered? So, the quality of the sofa, as an example, has to be like photorealistic. Very doubtful. Very doubtful. When it comes to a Revit model, particularly when you're doing working drawings, it's more of an idea that you need to know that the sofa is of this size and this location within the model. There are other instances where you need to get strong amounts of metadata out of a model. So if you pick a manufacturer in that instance, you may be better off because you might have a generic box that is a dishwasher, but it could be dishwasher Fisher & Paykel, or it could be a Samsung dishwasher. But if you download the manufacturer's dishwasher Revit family, it will give you the serial number, the warranty period, the contact details, maybe the cost per unit, stuff like this. So it really helps to work backwards in terms of what you want to get out of the model, and then that sort of helps you understand which way you need to go. So considerations that I would give you for downloading Revit content is, first of all, the file sizes. Again, it's very tempting to just download everything you see online, but some of the manufacturer content is incredibly heavy when it just doesn't need to be. Case in point is the RCP items. Remember, just before I was talking about those downlights, and those downlights are really just a circular family that's been created, and then it's got a symbol over it and you place them throughout your project. You can download downlights that have like the filament models even, or the little LED diodes. And it looks okay up in detail, but for what benefit? And especially, again, let's think about the fact that if we were documenting a university, you would have hundreds, if not thousands of lights. And if every one of those lights was 3 megabytes or 4 megabytes in size, you could be going upwards of hundreds of megabytes or half a gig just in light fixtures, which would drastically slow down your model. So you want to consider file size. Whether the model is native or imported, what this means is, and I'll explain this a little bit more when we open up these families and go through them, just because something is a Revit family doesn't mean it was actually modeled in Revit. In fact, for some of this furniture that's more of complex geometry, it's very common. It will be modeled in another software. It could be SolidWorks, could be Autodesk Fusion, could be Rhino, and then you basically export that model as a DWG file, then import it into a Revit family, and then save it as a Revit family. So that's important to note because, again, the geometry could be quite heavy, or it may not appear quite nice in Revit. It might be all like a wire mesh appearance. Whether the family is static or parametric, again, parametric families really should be made in-house. It could be like, let's say, it could be a lighting track, a track light, that you may be able to just stretch that, and as the light gets bigger, it starts placing more lights every meter or so, every 800 mil. That's a parametric family. But a fridge is a fridge. You're not going to want to have a fridge and then, okay, I'm going to make this one 3 2.5 meters high. Now I want it to be 1.8 meters high. When you go to the shops, when you procure a fridge is the size that the manufacturer has designed it to. So that's the difference between static and parametric. The quality of the model is important. Just generally, how clean it appears. Are the model files dirty? Is it in millimeters? Is it in metric, or is it imperial? Is it a local file, or is it something from abroad that we don't even sell in Australia? And then you got to consider the LOD and the LOI level of development, which really has to deal with how detailed the model graphically looks, and LOI has to do with that information. Does it hold metadata about the warranty, the model number, the contact details for it, or does it just say Dell computer monitor, and that's it, nothing else? That's what LOI means. And then next is whether it's hosted or not. I'll get into that in a second, whether models are hosted. And generally speaking, it is best not to have hosted models, hosted families, unless they need to punch a hole through a door. I think we went back through this back in class 1 or 2, but a door is a hosted family. When you put a door into a wall, it punches a hole through the wall, and if you delete the wall, the door will also delete. Same with windows. If you delete a wall, the windows will delete. They cannot exist without the wall. That's a hosted family. Say, for instance, a floor is not a hosted family within itself. You could delete the wall and the floor would still exist. But there are families that have to be hosted to floors. So I think one of our families is a fridge, and the fridge cannot exist if it doesn't stick to a floor, as an example. So that's what hosted families mean. And then finally, whether the model or the Revit family is open source or manufacturer based. What commonly happens is that there are some platforms out there which are just user based. So I could make a family, or you could, and then upload it online, which is very helpful and very handy when you're looking for something unique or you need something really quick. But it's unreliable because it's not coming from the manufacturer. So think about the fact that let's say you might download let's say a double door fridge. You want a nice wide fridge, and then you design your kitchen around this family that just someone's made online, and then you go out and get it built, and then it actually doesn't fit the fridge that you've specified. Whether, let's say it's a Samsung fridge, doesn't fit that, because you should have chosen the actual Samsung manufacturer content that has that model at the right specification or the right size. So ultimately, where do you download these families from? So I've got a couple of examples here, which I'll take you through, and they're way more than what I'm showing you, but it will present a bit of a guide to give you a start. So first up, RevitCity.com. Revit City is an open source platform, so these are not families that are made by manufacturers. These are just open source. By going to my downloads component here, just search in any keyword you're after. So let's just say, I don't know, sofa. And you'll see there's a bunch of sofas that will come up under here, and they'll vary in quality and detail and all those considerations and parameters that I spoke about just before in those slides. But you can find good families here if you need something in a hurry. You'll notice that you've got to log in or join to download, and most of these platforms I'm about to show you, they do have a login. They're all free, but they do still require just an account to download. Next up will be BIMobject, BIMobject.com, another great resource. In here you'll see a lot more manufacturer-based content. So sometimes you may search something and it may not be exactly what you're after. It may come up with some other random stuff, like you see I type in sofa and I get doors. But I'm not sure why. It's just the way the site filters information. It's probably not the most intuitive platform, but nonetheless, the quality of the models are pretty good, and the images you see aren't always what you download too. So these couches are quite complex geometries, but if I just go to an example, so what you're looking at here, this is a rendering model. This is not a BIM model. This is not a Revit model. This is for 3ds Max or rendering software. But the reason why I want to show you this is sort of what a sofa or a couch looks like in terms of mesh modeling to get that realistic look. It's an incredibly complex mesh model. You'd never do this inside of Revit. It would end up just looking like a black blob on your screen because every one of these lines would show, and it just wouldn't be really beneficial. So keep that in mind when you're downloading these families. You might get these little preview images, but they probably won't look like anywhere close to this once you actually download them. The next one, a couple of manufacturers, so Chevello, different ways of pronouncing it. Just one supplier. There are multitudes out there. They predominantly do office furniture, but they've got a good array of models. You see here they've got 3D CAD files, 2D CAD files, but I've specifically chosen Revit Families here. There's not a huge amount, but they're good quality. The next one is Modeler. Again, very, very good platform. Lots of proprietary systems. You can see under the brands here, they've got a ton of different brands that are available. They're a good resource to use. The next one is Caroma. The plumbing supplier in Australia. They've got really good content. You'll see here that when you select their BIM content or their BIM library, you've got an option to pick, firstly what item you're after, also what type of model category you're after. So you see Revit.rfa, Revit Family. You can click on that, and then you can click on whichever one of these items you want: basins, toilet suites, sinks, etc. These are really good quality families. Another furniture proprietary system is Herman Miller, big furniture maker in general, but lots of office furniture as well. And the quality of their models are very, very high, and there's lots of metadata within them. But it will always come back to how much information you need out of the model, remembering that working drawings, if you do have furniture in there, they're really a graphical representation of what your design intent is. It's not like a render where it has to be exactly the chair or the sofa or the bench top that you've selected. And then the last one I'll show you is bimcontent.com. These are, again, all manufacturer-based models. And when I say manufacturer, what I mean is that the manufacturer may not actually model them, but there are companies out there that build Revit Families professionally, and they'll build catalogs of manufacturers' content. So it has to be approved by the manufacturer. It's got a lot of metadata in them. They're always built to a pretty high quality because the drafting house that actually builds these families do thousands and if not hundreds of thousands of Revit Families. They're usually pretty good at modeling them, making sure they're nice and clean and they're easy to use. But you'll find, particularly in BIM content, you'll find a lot of accessible bathroom items, grab rails and whatnot. The other thing that I like about BIM content is you'll see that you can search families based upon Revit categories, which is quite helpful just to narrow down exactly what you're after. So in the file with the lighting fixtures from early on in this tutorial, there's also some generic families here. So you now have the resources you need to go download whatever content you want to go find and build up that library, those libraries, and that's great going forward. Just for expediency, I've given you just a selection of families that we're going to utilize here. Some of these, like the furniture, you can choose to use these ones or not, or replace them with your own. But we are going to fit out the model with a set of families, and then basically you're going to find that we're going to need to do quite a bit of editing in our view templates just to make sure the right things are and aren't showing. But the items that I do want you to utilize are some of these bathroom and plumbing fixtures, particularly because as we build our joinery models, or our joinery families, we're going to all utilize the same families just for, again, ease of use and to limit any issues. So to get families into your project is, it's very simple. You can either go to one of those websites that I spoke about, and they all have, it's very intuitive to download them. I'm sure you'll work that out quite easily. It opens up in a file explorer. You open up the model, and it will basically open up the family editor. So I'll give you an example. So this is actually a project model filled with different families. But if I was to click on any of these, so let's go the Fisher & Paykel fridge, that's just here. I will go edit family. This is what it will look like when you download that family. So you open it up and it looks like this, and you'll see it's on this like floor here. This is what I was referring to before in that PowerPoint about, whether it's a host-based family or it's not. So this is hosted. This thing here signifies that it's a floor, meaning that you have to find a floor to place this fridge on. You can't place it in the middle of nowhere, essentially, which for a fridge I find is a little bit strange, but anyway, that's okay. It's all good. No massive problem. The one thing you have to understand though is you cannot change families that are face-based or hosted in general into non-hosted families, and that's important to remember when you start building or downloading this content. So from here, I'll just go load into project and close, and I'm going to choose today's class. There we are there. Say okay, and it's just going to open into, whatever view I have open at the time. So I think it might be a floor. No, it's not. It's a RCP. So you can see here, I'm not really getting an option to put it anywhere. I'm getting a lot of that no smoking sign, the circle with the cross in it, around my cursor, and that's because the fridge is trying to find a floor to host to, but because I'm in an RCP, it's looking like it's going to be hosting to a ceiling, which I can't do. So what I'll do is I'll just go to my ground floor. But when I do that, I'm going to lose my fridge. I no longer can see my fridge. So in order to bring that back, I can either go up to component under architecture and go place component, or the shortcut is CM, and that brings up families. And in my property selector, my type selector, I can click my drop down, select whatever family I want, and it's usually on the one that I just loaded in, which is the Fisher and Paykel fridge. So let's say, for instance, I can hit spacebar. No, it's not even rotating it. I'm just going to put it, I don't know, let's put it over here for now. Oh yeah, now I can hit spacebar, rotate it around, and then just drag it back in. Now you're going to see on the floor plan as well, you're probably going to see this as well, is that we've got all of our electrical items. We can see them all on our floor plan, which is not what we want, including all our switches. So this is why we've got to keep going back and forth between our view template and our actual model. So I'm going to go to our view template, and I just want to go and edit my override view model objects or categories. I'm going to find electrical equipment or electrical fixtures, turn those both off. Say okay, okay. All right, but I can still see my lights. Okay, so a lot of these are lighting fixtures, not electrical equipment. So that's good to know. So let's go back into there, architectural plan, model categories, lighting fixtures. Okay, okay. And there they go. And I imagine these switches, these are lighting devices. Now, again, I'm able to tell what these are because when I click on the family, so I click on these switches, I can see under the type selector, lighting devices is highlighted. So I know that's the category. I can also see my smoke detector, which is a fire alarm device. So now I know when I go back into here, I can then turn those both off. So lighting devices and fire alarm devices. There we go, those two. Okay, okay. And there we go, everything's turned off now. So it just looks like the regular floor plan as it did before. The inverse will have to happen in our RCPs. We haven't created a view template yet for our RCPs. We've just been sort of editing on the go, but we'll get to that towards the end. But you can see that it's completely normal to continually need to manipulate your model as you go along. Like this will always happen as we add more detail. So I've got my fridge there. I'll just drag it around here for now. I'm not sure what our kitchen design is going to look like just yet. It may even be better to put on the other side of the kitchen. But let's go back to, I'm going to go back to our families. So we did the method of sort of editing the family and then loading into project. You can always just copy and paste from here as well. So let's take like just the toilet. So I got this toilet here. It's wall fixed, hung. I'll go Control C, go to our project, Control V, say okay, and I'll just paste it here. Oh, where did it go? There it is. Okay, so it's sitting below. Okay, so it was sitting underneath the floor. So hitting spacebar just to drag that around. I'll put the toilet there, like so. Could even go like that. Either or, doesn't really matter. Once you get this, once these are in here, you can do whatever you need to. And then the vanity unit we haven't built yet, but we will build the vanity unit in our next class, and then we'll put the basin in there. So that's a good tip for you guys to remember. Until we build like our kitchen joinery, I don't want you to be putting sinks or even the dishwasher or the tap. They don't have to go in there. For now, it's really the shower, the bath, the toilet. They can go in at this point in time. So take the shower. I'll go Control C, go back to our project, and in this case, I'm going to go up to level 1, where we've got a full bathroom. Control V. I'll just place that there. And there's the shower. Now, this is a pretty good parametric family. So if I click on this, you've got like a wide range of options. You can drag the shower length, you can change the shower width. Now this is an example of a shower that isn't one that was downloaded. This is one that I made. So you have some of these different options here. Even if you look in the properties, you got the option whether it's a linear drain, I can turn the drain off, or whether even there's a shower door, I can turn the shower door off so it's just glazing like so. Or even if there's side glazing. So in some instances, in fact, let me go to my 3D, it'll probably show you better. So you can see there's the glass, there's the shower there. I can say, all right, I want the shower door, like so, or do I want this to be finished off? Because this could be against a wall, so there's no need to have another piece of glass, or do I want to see the glass there? And then as you saw before, I can change what that looks like in terms of how wide and deep that is. So that's a parametric family that I made. But that's an example of why, just downloading families is not always the best bet. Now, it doesn't really matter whether this shower is, got this shower head or a different shower head or has a different finish. As long as it looks like this in the drawing, the builder knows what you want. So that's why I don't necessarily need 10,000 different types of shower heads. I only need one with a decent shower that gives me a few options, and I can basically do any design style I want. Cool, so I'm just going to flick this shower around a little bit. It's something like this. I'll put it over here. Drag this back a bit. I can drag this out. What's my dimensions? I can even just type in the dimension here. So 1,000 long, 1,000 wide. Okay, I get something like this. And then I just use my move tools to move that into place. Okay, that looks good. Excellent. Now that I've got my toilet already in this project, I can just go CM on my keyboard and go find my toilet. There it is, BS_plum. There's my toilet. Hit spacebar to rotate that around. I'll put it on the wall just here. And I probably have to lift that off the floor. That's sitting on the floor at the moment. If I go and create a section box. Oh no, that looks good. Yep, that's sitting above. Yep, all good. Back to level 1. And I do have a bath, so let's go find that bath, the freestanding bath. Just here, Control C, back to level 1, Control V, spacebar, and I'll just drag this around to look something like this. And then we've got a vanity in this bathroom, which again we will model and build, and then bring that together in the next class. So far looks pretty good. I'll just do a section box around the bathroom, and I'll just drag this down. And you can sort of see that we're getting somewhere now. The model is definitely starting to mature in terms of the amount of metadata within it, and the amount of detail in terms of models, light fixes, smoke alarms, HVAC, plumbing fixtures. That's looking pretty good now. So the rest of that, placing families, I'll leave up to your discretion. I might just do a couple of more things. So let's take like the dining table, and I'll take this couch and this TV unit. Control C, go back to my floor plan. Control V, click OK. When you get that, it just means that it's bringing in some materials with these families, which is fine. Now this is quite big, as in like this furniture is probably a little bit too big for this space, but I'll still have a bit of a play around with it. So we might need to go get some other furniture. So I've got a TV cabinet here, which I might rotate, and maybe I'll just fit it in here. So this one I can't change the width of it. So this is a good example of where I'd like to have a parametric family, but I don't. So if I go down here, you can see there's the TV unit, there's the couch. So you can see, yeah, definitely that's much too big. The couch is probably okay, but this is where you'll just go back and forth online and see what you can find. So this is a Herman Miller couch, by the way. So it's one of those online that I downloaded. Let's keep playing around here. Yeah, TV unit can go against that wall, but it basically takes up the entirety of that wall. If I drag this out, you'll see that the door to the laundry is right there. And it's probably not too bad, but we do have this nook here, so we probably should be using that in some capacity. But I'll just keep playing around with this as you will, and designing and doing a few other options. I think we definitely need a smaller couch. This dining table is definitely too big to put in here when you consider we still have a kitchen to go in here, so we'll have to play around with that a little bit. And likewise with, say, some of the bedrooms. So if I go up to level 1, go to 3D, I'll grab this bed and go back to level 1. Pretty sure this is a king bed. So even something like that, that's probably too big. We probably want to get a queen size bed. And I can copy this shower over here. And again, good thing, because it's parametric, I just take those little grips and I move them. And I don't need this, I don't need that side glass. So I'm going to remove the side glazing so that goes. And then I'll rotate this. And then mirror it. There we go, something like that. Now that's not perfectly rotated, so I need to do that. There we go. That's perfect. Look, that fits really nicely in that area. And then I'll grab the toilet. And I'll put that there. And then, of course, we've got the vanity unit that we'll create. But even here, I'll do another section box around this area. There we go. So our ensuite's starting to get filled out. And a shower in there, got the bed in there. That is a big bed for this bedroom. Toilet, we'll do the vanity soon, and we'll find some smaller families. I'll let you work through in the other class, in your other class, in your working drawings class, work out what families you want to utilize. Now, we still want all this furniture here, but it's very easy to turn it off, because when I click on those families, I can see that they're furniture based. You can see that there, and so as of course, because these are working drawings, you don't need to see all this. I just go into my architectural plan, turn off the furniture families, and they will turn off furniture systems as well. Okay. All right, and you'll see they turn off. So even though they exist in the 3 dimensions, like so, they won't exist in our floor plan. And because it's the same view template between the 2 floors, I update it on one floor plan, updates on the other. That's the beauty of view templates.